This is TWiT.
I came across your article and was immediately like, okay, we have got to have Victoria on the show to talk about this because you see this trend, but until you sort of say the quiet part out loud, it's not like people aren't catching on, I think, or at least I hadn't sort of formulated it in the way that you had. So your article tackles the kind of growing overlap between consumer wellness gadgets and regulated medical technology. So to start, what is happening in the tech industry right now that makes the distinction between wellness and medical so important for consumers to understand?
Right. So, this is kind of an argument about semantics. And for a lot of people, their wearables or their smartwatches are health trackers and fitness trackers. And something like tracking your steps, tracking your heart rate, tracking your sleep, those are all considered wellness because what you're basically doing is establishing a baseline. You're learning kind of just for fun what your basic metrics are, learning more about yourself as educational. But, ever since the Apple Watch got FDA clearance for the EKG feature, what that does is it helps detect whether you have atrial fibrillation. Now we're getting into a territory where these devices are marketed as being able to save your life because maybe it flags or alerts you to when there's an abnormal health event going on. And these are borderline diagnostic in some cases. So the reason this EKG feature needs FDA clearance is because, it's telling you need to go to a doctor, right? It's saying like, hey, we flagged something here. This is kind of off. You may want to consult a medical professional about that. So that's very different, right? It's not just tracking something for fun or learning more about yourself. It's something that could actually inform your treatment. It's something that you could go to a doctor with. So that's like a very important distinction. But what's happening now is that consumers are increasingly expecting more and more advanced features like this. With medical features, it becomes this gray area because now we're getting stuff that seems like it could be wellness, but it could also be medical. So the way that the companies are talking about these features has increasingly blurred the lines. They're saying things like, these are clinically proven. We've done research. Well, what does clinically proven mean for most people? It sounds to the average person that clinically proven, clinically validated, that means science happened, right? And science can be done poorly. Science can be done really well. But what does that mean? So the reason we have FDA clearance and regulatory oversight is to give people a sense like this is legit. This has gone through our nation's highest regulatory standards, but even saying something like FDA cleared, it's not telling you the whole story because all FDA cleared means is that this product, before being marketed to consumers, has gone through the appropriate vetting process and has been deemed not to be a super high risk. That's the only thing that means. So yeah.
As opposed to being murky. Something where you are proving its effectiveness, right? Its efficacy, rather. It's just a thing saying this likely won't kill you by putting it on your wrist.
Yes, exactly. It's saying this likely won't kill you. It's reasonably accurate based on, because when you do go through the FDA clearance process, it is very rigorous. You do have to do studies that show that it works on people with different skin color. It has to be proven to be HIPAA compliant. So there's a lot that actually goes into it. It's very resource intensive and it's very time consuming. A lot of companies take years to actually get these features. Unless you're Apple or a big company with very deep pockets and regulatory know-how, it can be very challenging for some of these smaller companies to actually go through that process. And so a lot of them kind of rely on the wellness moniker because the FDA is not, going to go in and require that from a wellness product because it's just for fun.
So let's talk about an example of a product I actually happen to have on my finger right now. The Aura, the Aura Ring is an example you bring up. Can you talk to us about Aura's features and its partnerships to illustrate this kind of trend of a wellness device crossing over at some point into the territory of making medical claims?
Yeah, so Aura is a really interesting example because they really do care about clinical research and that sort of stuff. So Aura, it started out as a sleep and recovery tracker, and they were doing a lot of research into algorithms to tell you whether you're sleeping well or whether you're recovering well. And then the pandemic happened, and they partnered with a bunch of researchers from different universities to see whether the Aura Ring and temperature data could predict illness. And a lot of wearable companies were doing this at that time. They weren't the only one. Whoop was also a company doing this at that time. Apple, Garmin, all of these companies were participating with various researchers to kind of pinpoint whether or not illness could be predicted through different changes in your biometrics. And then earlier this year, I believe, Aura came out with a feature called Symptom Radar. And so what Symptom Radar does is that it tracks your baselines, and if it detects an early health change, you'll get a little flag, something that says something may or may not be happening. So it's not like what the original purpose was, right? It's not saying, hey, you're falling sick and ill with the flu, or you're falling sick and ill with COVID. Like, it can't actually detect that. But what it now does is says, like, hey, you're showing signs of some kind of health change, early stages. Maybe you're falling sick. Maybe you're just extra tired, but it's flagging something. So you might want to take some early level precautions, like hydrate more, sleep more, just do whatever it is that you do when you think you're falling ill. Now, that's the exact type of feature that you're like, hey, is this medical or is this actually wellness? Who, like I saw a TikTok with a celebrity DJ who is going like, oh yeah, the main reason I have my Aura Ring is because it's going to tell me when I'm going to get sick. And it's like, sir, that's actually not what it's doing. It's giving you a flag saying that you're showing signs of a health change. So like, you can see how the semantics there change for wellness versus what is considered diagnostic and medical and requires FDA oversight. So it's very murky.
Yeah, and that murkiness, this wasn't a part of the original questions, but I want to ask you this because I know you pay very close attention to these wellness, or to these wearable devices. It's the other W. Do you think that this murky area has resulted in features that aren't as powerful and useful as they otherwise would be because companies aren't wanting to devote the resources necessary to create a more powerful feature, given that it would require them to go through FDA clearance? Does that make sense? Like, yes. Avoiding kind of making them more powerful because it's like, okay, if we do that, then we're going to have to get FDA clearance first, and that's going to cost even more money to make that happen.
Yeah, so that's like kind of the crux of what the Whoop versus the FDA situation is. And so, like, to catch people up, the FDA sent a letter to Whoop earlier this month saying, hey, this new blood pressure insight feature you have, you messed up. That requires FDA clearance, and you're marketing it. It's available in beta to people as is. And this is clearly a diagnostic feature because, the feature requires you to calibrate with an actual blood pressure cuff. And then once you calibrated it, you get an estimate every day of your diastolic and systolic readings. And it kind of indicates to you whether it's high, low, or good. And so, Whoop's argument is that this is not a diagnostic feature. This is actually just a wellness feature in the same way that you track heart rate variation to see if you're stressed, in the same way that you track your heart rate. This is not diagnostic at all because we're not like telling you whether you have high or or low blood pressure. Like, we're not telling you that you have hypertension or hypotension. And so you can see the conflict really clearly there, because Whoop is saying, we're just trying to come out with something that's innovative, that's going to help people think about their blood pressure in a different way. And the FDA is like, no, 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 no. This is inherently diagnostic in nature. People are going to see this feature and they're going to think, oh, my device just told me that I have high blood pressure. So, like, you can see that both sides kind of have a point, because it is true, to your point, that, companies are tweaking what these features could be to kind of get around the liability. One, it's a liability issue if they tell you if they're diagnosing you with something and it turns out not to be true. That's not great. And then two, it is a massive investment for some of these smaller companies who are trying to innovate in the space to go like, your health, that has immensely high stakes, and that requires a lot of money, not just to develop the feature, but to then go through the regulatory process of it all. So it's both of these things, and it's very prevalent in the health tech space at this moment. Like, there's so many examples.
Yeah. And one of the features that you talked about that sort of really falls along the side of wellness, almost because of its lack of capability, one would argue, was the antioxidant feature. Can you tell our listeners, if they haven't heard about this, what is the feature? And then how did you test it?
Okay. So Samsung just came out with its Galaxy Watch 8 series, and one of the marquee health features with that is the antioxidant index. So I believe it was last year, Samsung basically released a new 3-in-1 active biosensor that doesn't just have the green and the infrared LED lights. It has a whole assortment of colors, and they told me at the time that that's going to open up a whole lot of different metrics to test. So this year they have the antioxidant index, and it uses, I believe, the blue and infrared sensors to measure the carotenoid levels in your skin. Now, carotenoids, we're getting into a science lesson here, but carotenoids are a type of antioxidant. You probably have heard about them. They're like beta carotene, lutein. They're these molecules that fight off oxidation in your body. And oxidation is associated with things like aging, chronic illness, just all the bad stuff that you don't want to have a lot of in your body. And the antioxidants fight against the free radicals and oxidation. So carotenoids are the pigment that give, carrots their orange color, bananas their yellow color. Like, it's basically something that you'll find in dark leafy greens and an assortment of yellow, red, and orange vegetables and fruits. So, to test this feature, I tested it on a Cheez-It and various other fruits. And it basically said that Cheez-It had a 99% oxidant, like it was like 99% on the antioxidant index.
It's like, eat this now, it will save your life.
And so I was like, oh, well, that's silly. But it turns out that Cheez-Its actually, the predominant cheese is cheddar. And cheddar does contain carotenoids. Oh. So there are antioxidants in the cheddar in Cheez-Its. And, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice, but to me, that means it's a healthy snack.
That is just a wellness statement, not a medical statement.
That is a wellness statement. But yeah, I tested it on a bunch of different things. Like, I colored my thumb, because you have to use your thumb on the sensor to test this feature. But basically, I colored my thumb different marker colors like yellow, orange, and blue. When I colored it orange, it was like, you are great. You are getting 100% antioxidants. And when it was blue, it was like 0 antioxidants. It's like, I eat a lot of vegetables and fruits, so I was like, this sounds a little sus. I tested it on broccoli, 100% for broccoli. I tested it on a blackberry that exploded because it's a blackberry, and berries don't do well when you press them against things. The berry only got 37 on the antioxidant index. So, it's an example of a feature that sounds very scientific, but can be fooled by various different things. And ultimately, how are you supposed to use it? Well, like, I think the way that you use it is if you're starting out on a new diet, or if you're trying to get better vegetable intake, you eat a certain amount and check it over time. And you kind of level set that way, and you learn, like, oh, the amount that I'm eating every day, yeah, that's about what I want to be aiming for. So, like, that is inherently what wellness features are supposed to do. You're supposed to, like, learn a little bit about yourself, adjust your behaviors accordingly, and there's no real diagnostic element there.
Absolutely. The last thing I want to ask you, some advice for an average person trying to buy a smart ring, a watch, another wearable. It can be difficult to tell just by looking at it what is a simple wellness tracker versus a validated health tool. Do you have any kind of red flags or key things that one should look for when they're attempting to determine, is a feature going to actually provide helpful information? Is it just a suggestion? That kind of thing.
So one of the red flag phrases that I look for are things like clinically proven, clinically validated, clinically tested, because what does that actually mean, right? Like, it implies that a bunch of rigorous science has been done. And in that case, I would ask you to go to the company's science page. One, they should have a science page, if that's true, where they communicate what the science is. And two, you should look if they're peer reviewed, or if it's going to be something just like a white paper, because some of these companies are like, we have a white paper. That's not clinical testing, my friends. Clinical testing is being published in a reputable journal, which also is an expensive thing for smaller companies to do. And it means that it's been peer reviewed. So yeah, I would be very skeptical. Like, I tested, actually, this is me going on a tangent again, but I tested a product a while back that said it was clinically validated. And I went to their science page, and it was a very slick science page. And then when I was clicking on all of their studies, it was by the same guy. It had very small sample sizes, like 10 people. That's not clinically validated, in my opinion. So you have to be very careful when you see clinically validated or clinically proven as a phrase. The other thing I would look for is whether they say it's FDA cleared, because FDA approval actually is kind of a flag there, because it's not FDA approval, it's FDA clearance. There are different meanings attached to the words FDA approval versus FDA clearance. So any of these health tech claims, you're going to want to look that they're using the correct verbiage, and clearance is a sign that they're being very transparent about how they are communicating what this feature can do. You're going to want to look for things that say, like, this is not medical advice. You actually, in these cases, really do want to read the fine print, because there have been studies done showing that people become very anxious and obsessive compulsive about these health features that are meant to kind of be, hey, these are just fun health features. People get very neurotic about the EKGs, even though it's not really telling you much about your heart health, other than what your heart rhythm is in a very small slice of time. So, I would just look for the marketing. Medical grade is another phrase that I am very suspicious of when I see, because what does medical grade mean? Officially, medical grade means doctors are using it in hospital settings. Are they using your health tracker in a hospital setting? Probably not. So, be very careful when when a consumer health product is saying that they are medical grade, because that's a very loaded term.
So this is actually an interesting question that came from our Discord that I think is fascinating. And I'm curious to hear your answer to this. Dustin says, I'm curious if Victoria believes non-invasive blood glucose is just around the corner, or if we're still a decade away when it comes to that technology.
Hey, Dustin, I could talk about this for a very long time. It is I actually wrote a story about this on The Verge that you can read. It's called, I believe the title is like, if you're a diabetic, don't count on a smartwatch to replace your needles. Basically because, we have been, as a society and as a research community, trying to make non-invasive glucose monitoring a thing since 1975. It hasn't happened yet. 1975 is the first recorded instance of trying to do non-invasive glucose monitoring.
Wow.
There are, and I get into it in this article, but there are a lot of challenges when it comes to glucose monitoring non-invasively through light. Certain things like if we're using infrared tech, which is like what a lot of them are doing, it can be affected by the temperature. So a hot day could change what it's basically saying for you there. And even if we do get non-invasive glucose monitoring, it is likely not going to be what you think it is, because we have CGMs, and CGMs are continuous glucose monitors. They're invasive in the fact that, you put it on your body, there's a little needle, it goes into your actual skin, and it reads the interstitial fluid glucose levels. And interstitial fluid is the fluid that's in between your cells. So it's not actually your blood, but it's an approximation of your blood glucose. Those took forever and have only just become over the counter for non-diabetics. And I promise you, I'm working on a thing about whether it's actually useful for non-diabetics or not. That'll come from me soon. But it's an immense process, and the stakes are so high, precisely because people with type 1 diabetes, they produce little to no insulin. Many of them produce no insulin. So if you're having a non-invasive thing and they're using it, and it doesn't tell them the correct glucose level, they could die. So what you're likely going to see is what I think is like trends, aggregated trends going like, we're monitoring your glucose levels and it seems like it's getting higher over a period of time. Maybe you want to go check it out at a doctor. Like, effectively, that's what I think you're going to see from consumer companies, just because the stakes and the liabilities of a feature like that are so incredibly high. And that's a clear example of a feature that you want to go through this incredibly rigorous vetted process. So, if something does come around the corner, which I am highly skeptical about, I do think we are going to be waiting much longer, several years, before anything like that comes out. I also think that it's not going to be what you think it's going to be when it does arrive. Like, if they do come out in the short term, it's going to be something closer to what I said, where it's like a trend graph with no direct readings. So that's my spiel. It's a thing I'm very passionate about. I do a lot of coverage about it on The Verge, trying to debunk all the people who are saying it's just around the corner. I've talked to a lot of diabetes tech experts over the years. All of them are like, nope.
It is not happening. It's not happening. Not for a long time.
Not in the sense that your smartwatch will be able to give you as accurate readings as a CGM, which, CGMs aren't perfect devices either. So I think we'll be waiting for a long time. Again, this journey started in 1975. That's 50 years ago.
You enjoying this tiny taste of Tech News Weekly? I'm happy to hear it. You can check out the full show on our website, twit.tv/TNW, or you can watch it right here on YouTube. Just click the link below.